All right, I think we got Steve with us now. Steve, you there?
I'm here.
All righty, he made it.
Well, I was trying to log into, I guess, what was the other line, and then it dumped me and told me to come over here and do it. So.
Okay, well, hey, welcome aboard here. We were just keeping the ball in the air for you. So this is a long-awaited show. Everybody's been bugging me, and everyone's got their popcorn and they're sitting on the edge of their seat. So.
Popcorn.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's supposed to be Milk Duds, man.
Milk, that's right. I'm with you. I sit corrected. Milk Duds. So, okay, we warmed them up. They're salted and buttered, the audience. Told them this whole deal with property taxes is rebutting the presumption for commercial use. We are not using our property for commercial use because this is where we eat, sleep, poop, and play. I got to clean that up. We eat, sleep, poop, and play. You cannot tax this. So I'll hand it over to you. And what do you got to add to that?
Well, technically, it's a substantive right to have someplace to live, and you can't tax rights. Is pretty much what it boils down to.
Right.
Bear with me just for a second. I'm trying to get this light out here on the porch so I can hang out and smoke and read my stuff. You know.
There you go, living the dream, there, buddy.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah. Okay, light on. There we go. Bingo. Now I am happening. The command post is underway.
Cool. This information needs to get out, stop the oppression and the tyranny. So.
Let me see. First off, man, I ain't a teacher. I'm not an instructor at this crap. I'm just an everyday guy who realized that something was really wrong. That our socialist commie in the state of Florida was somehow being able to steal properties, people's homes from them, and I don't know, 6-7 years ago, I had a friend of mine, people like some kids I grew up with, basically, were kids, I guess, and their mother had to sell this lakefront home that they grew up on and lived on because she couldn't afford to pay the property taxes, and kind of got me going there and said, there's something wrong with this. This doesn't make any sense if that's the way it works in land of the free and home of the brave. So I started doing some research here and looking through the Florida statutes, the Florida Constitution. I got turned on to the Florida Administrative Code, which was a great help. That's the key, is the government code in your state. That usually lays out the procedures and all the details of who's got to sign what, who's got to do everything in order to have these so-called assessments and returns and everything all done correctly to get them on the assessment roll. So I took several years to go through all this stuff and try to figure out and put heads or tails together. And what I came up with here was a lot of really great stuff, mainly in the state constitution. But as what I did, I just kind of wrote out some notes here, some case laws and things I found here in Florida when I was doing the research here. And I guess the big key here to understand is, first thing is your property, in order for it to be taxable, must be exercising a taxable privilege. In other words, you must be conducting some type of business upon it or making some kind of profit that'd be considered to come under what would be considered to be a calling, privilege. What's the other words they use?
And that's only under license, right? Yeah, that's only under license, because I don't want people to get confused and say, "Oh, hey, I'm building ham radios and selling them out of my garage." That's not taxable. That's not commercial. Only if you were to have a license.
Well, or basically have a sign up and you're incorporated as right. Bo and Rocco's Buy a Radio kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Then there would be an excise license, a occupational license maybe, and then if you have employees and things, you're going to be caught up in the IRS stuff as far as the withholding and all that garbage that they do to people that are incorporated technically. Even the definition of taxpayer in the Florida statutes is corporation, or a legal entities, I believe is the word they use, which I have this. We'll go through this little thing here I laid out here, give you guys a pretty good idea of what the court systems have said about this and how it has to be conducted, and what the Florida Constitution, the Florida Administrative Code, and the Florida statutes would support the Constitution of the state of what is allowed to be taxed, what the property appraiser is supposed to be taxing, how he's supposed to derive the what's the word I'm looking for? How are you supposed to derive the, let's say, just value of the property that's being used for the taxable privilege?
Sure.
So, just sort of wrote down the list here. I have a case here from Gray versus Winthrop. It's a Florida case out of the 4th District Court of Appeals from the 1975. And it makes it perfectly clear that a state may not tax persons' property or interests which are not within its territorial jurisdiction and subject only to applicable and controlling federal law. State taxation is authorized, limited, and regulated by the state constitution and by state statutes enacted thereunder. That comes from Gray versus Winthrop, Florida case. I don't know, should I give out the whole number? You think anybody's interested?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right, that'd be Gray versus Winthrop, which is Winthrop, and that's at 115 Florida 721, 156 Southern Directory, which would be SO 270 at page 94, and that would be the 1970. I'm sorry, yeah, I think it's the 1978 is what I got here. Okay. Then we got another case here that comes from the Department of Revenue versus Brookwood Associates out of the Florida District Court of Appeals, which is out of the Southern Directory, Section 184. And it states clearly that since the state can levy a property tax only on property having a situs in the state, provisions requiring all property within the state to be subject to taxation will not be construed to include property which has no situs. No situs for taxation within the state. So now we're going to cover situs here. When you look up the situs in the Black's Law Dictionary, 6th edition, it states a location or place of a crime or business, or the right or power to tax it. Situs of property for tax purposes is determined by whether the taxing state has sufficient contact with personal property sought to be taxed to justify in fairness the particular tax. And that is case law from town of Caddy versus Alexander Construction Company out of Wisconsin. You can look it up in the Black's Law Dictionary. Situs, S-I-T-U-S. It's a Latin word for, I don't know what it means, but I guess it means what I just read.
Right.
So let me flip pages here. And then we're going to, I guess, get more into basically the state constitution now. Well, okay, I have another definition of situs called business situs, which is even more explicit to really give you an idea what situs is all about. The situs acquired for tax purposes by one who carries on business in the state more or less permanent in its nature. A situs arises when notes, mortgages, tax sale certificates, and the like are brought into the state for something more than a temporary purpose and are devoted to some business use there and thus become incorporated with the property of the state for revenue purposes. A situs arises where possession and control of property right has been localized in some independent business or investment away from the owner's domicile so that it is substantially used and the value primarily attached to it and becomes an asset of the outside business. And that's a state case. State versus Atlantic Oil Production Company out of Oklahoma. Now, Florida statutes, 212031, tax on rental or license fee for use of real property. A1, it is declared to be the legislative intent that every person is exercising a taxable privilege who engages in the business of renting, leasing, letting, granting, or license for the use of any real property unless such property is used exclusively for dwelling units. Now we have the definition of taxpayer out of Florida Statutes 220.03. Means any corporation subject to the tax imposed by this code and includes all corporations for which a consolidated return is filed under Florida Statutes 220.131. Then there's another definition of taxpayer out of Florida Statutes 192.001. Taxpayer means the person or other legal entity in whose name an asset included in the agent of a timeshare period time holder. I don't know if I read it to make any sense. I'll do it one more time. Taxpayer means the person or other legal entity in whose name property is assessed, including an agent of a timeshare period time holder. Now we have the Florida State Constitution out of this is the 1885 Constitution, which is really clear here in the Section 16 out of Article 16. That property of all corporations, whether hereto or thereto incorporated, shall be subject to taxation unless such property is held and used exclusively for religious, scientific, municipal, educational, literary, or charitable purposes. Then I got a nice case here that even makes it more clear that taxing statutes and statutes conferring authority to impose taxes are to be strictly construed. That's Department of Revenue versus Brookwood Association out of Florida District Court of Appeals, 1st District. And that was the case I read off earlier, had a little bit of stuff. And that was a really good case. And there's another case called Loeb that's really good here in Florida that cuts through it. Now we're back into the Florida statutes again. This comes under the exemption chapter, which is chapter 196. 196, 181, exemption of household goods and personal effects. There shall be exempt from all taxation to every person residing and making his or her permanent home in this state, household goods and personal effects. Now let me make this clear. There shall be exempt from taxation to every person residing or making his or her permanent home in this state, household goods and personal effects. Title to such household goods and personal effects can be held individually or by entities jointly or in common with others. Now we get to the Florida Administrative Code, 12D-7.022, exemption of household goods and personal effects. Here, this defines what household goods and personal effects are. only household goods and personal effects of the taxpayer. Now remember, we're talking about taxpayers now, which are actually employed in the use of the serving of the creature comforts of the owner and not held for commercial purposes are entitled to the exemptions provided in Section 196, 181 Florida statutes. Creature comforts are things which give bodily comfort such as food, clothing, and shelter. Common commercial purposes include owning household goods and personal effects as stock and trade or as in furnishing and rental units. So, household goods and personal effects are to be exempt from taxation, and the Florida Administrative Code defines that as being creature comforts, which is defined as shelter. Now we go to the Black's Law Dictionary, 6th edition, and we look up the definition of shelter. In statutes relating to the provisions of food, clothing, and shelter for one's children, the term generally refers to a home with proper environments as well as protection from the weather. Now we're back into the Florida Statutes 196 Exemption Chapter .031, Exemptions of Homesteads. Every person who on January 1st has legal or equitable title, beneficiary title, or equity to real property in the state who resides thereon in good faith and makes his permanent home or her permanent home or permanent residence or the permanent residence of another or others legally or naturally dependent upon such person is entitled to exemption from all taxation. Now we got the Florida Constitution, Article 7, Section 3B, taxes, exemptions. They'll also be exempt from all taxation accumulated to every head of family residing in the state, household goods and personal effects valued by general law. So, I mean, the point I'm making is if you start looking around through the codes, as like Rod Class and these guys will tell you, it's all code pleading. The statutes make it pretty clear to any jerk-off that lives on a street corner, if you read this, it makes it pretty clear they have no authority to be taxing the place that you live in.
Absolutely.
And I got a bunch more. I mean, I just go on and on with this stuff. They talk about exemption from ad valorem taxes for exempt entities. Oh, and here we got the Florida State Constitution, Article 7, Section 6A, which is almost verbatim of 196.031. Every person who has the legal or equitable title to real estate and maintains thereon the permanent residence of the owner or other legally or naturally dependent upon the owner shall be exempt from taxation thereon. The real estate may be held by legal, equitable title, or by entities jointly or in common as a condominium or indirectly by stock, ownership, or membership, presenting the owners or members appropriately interested in the corporation owning a fee. I hate reading these things, so sometimes the wording is so weirded, you know. But when you read through this stuff, it's obvious. This is what I took to the property appraiser here in Orange County, and he took the property off the tax roll real fast.
Right. All this stuff is buried, and you're just bringing it to the light of day.
It took me 2 years to go through all this and put it together. So you have to get the Constitution, you got to put the statute that's enacted from the Constitution, then the government code that puts the procedure in play of how they're supposed to interpret what the Constitution says. Yeah, and if you don't really have a lot of experience at reading this stuff, it can take you quite some time. Luckily, my background is in technical, so I'm used to reading technical manuals and assembly manuals and schematics and things. So, and that still took me a while to even do this myself, you know. But the point I'm making is from reading this stuff, and then I got tons of case law here I can go through to spend probably another hour. It's pretty much making clear what ad valorem taxes apply to the calling and all that stuff, which we can get into that here. I just mainly wanted to hit just the basic laws. And then they have a lot of procedural stuff, like the Homestead Exemptions start here in the Florida Administrative Code 12D-7013, Homestead Exemptions. The head of family occupying the second story of a building as his home, and the first story of the building as his business, is entitled to claim a homestead exemption on the building. Now, basically what that's telling you is homestead exemption only applies to someone who lives on the property that they have their business on. If you're living in a neighborhood someplace where you have a little 200-foot by 150-foot square lot with a 3-bedroom house, a garage, and a swimming pool, you would never apply for homestead exemption there. From everything I'm seeing here, the property appraiser is not even supposed to be talking to you. But guess what? They do this to gain revenue, which makes it theft. If they're collecting money that they don't have any authority to collect, that's theft.
Exactly. And they're using the mails to do it. So, you know,
when you get ready to put your criminal complaint together, you can use the mail fraud, which is USC, I think 1341, Title 18, 1341, 1343, I believe. They're falsifying records, which comes under 2071 Title 18. They're creating fictitious obligations, and I believe that's 514 or 513. And then they're also creating false securities. And that comes on, that's 513. I get the two mixed up. 513, 514 are right together. One is false securities. The other one is creating fictitious obligations. And that's exactly what they're doing when they're putting property on the tax roll when they're supposed to be there.
That's four hits right there by a baseball bat. Bam, bam. I mean, that's heavy duty.
Then you break into the constitutional right they're violating. Under Article 1, Section 2, it makes it perfectly clear that the people of the state have the right to own property, procure property, protect property, possess property. Well, no, that's not the case here, because the municipal for-profit corporation is telling you that, no, it's a privilege, and if you don't pay it, we're going to wipe out your whole home for a couple $1,000s they can't even prove you owe. They're going to sell this crazy tax deed, which, once again, I got case law here, too, we'll hopefully get into, that states clearly the only person that can sell property is the guy that has the title to it. The county never has title to it, but they create these tax deeds on these properties that they don't even own. Well, that's a conversion.
Exactly.
I mean, these people are doing this on a daily basis, on a monthly basis, yearly basis, and doing it all the time, been doing it for 50, 60 years, and none of the American stupid people who claim to be so smart ever reads their codes all they're supposed to be doing.
So did you actually put together a criminal complaint?
Yeah, we sort of went there. I have a friend of mine in the neighborhood that I somewhat knew pretty well, and about 3 years ago they went and took his house with a tax deed thing, and we just sued the crap out of them and made out really well. I don't really want to get into the particulars of that right yet because I'm still trying to analyze what went on. We're still trying to get the synopsis of how we managed to do this, which was the fact that I did do a Title 42 1983 suit on them. And I laid most all this stuff in there, showing that what they did fall underneath those criminal statutes out of Title 18, plus the Florida statutes. I had a lot of Florida statutes for trespass and theft and conversion and fraudulent transfers, acting under color of law. Let me say, it was simulated processes under color of law. We got a lot of great statutes here for that stuff that fit this really well. So I drew up a really nice complaint on these guys and brought them to the early settlement table without one hearing. Now, the key point is when I got my property off the tax rolls and when I got a couple friends of mine here in the county off tax rolls. The funny part was when we went to Osceola County here, a friend of mine lives over there, and he wanted to do it. Well, the neat thing was the property appraiser here has been here for 40 years. So as soon as he saw all this stuff, he knew where we were going. He knew what was up. He just didn't even give us an argument and said he'd take care of it. But when we went to Osceola County, it was a woman who'd just been recently elected within the last year. We're showing her this stuff, and she's totally freaking out. She'd never seen this before. She even had to call in some of her assistants to look at this and see what we were talking about and what we were doing. And it was quite an interesting routine. But eventually, about a week later, she calls us up and says, we took care of it. It's off tax roll. Didn't even have to go to court.
Right, excellent.
When you shove their crap in their face, what else are they going to do? And they're going to take a chance of being sued for who knows how many millions of dollars for doing this criminal act of extortion and threats through the mail and grand theft of private property and armed robbery, because that's what they do. You got the tax deed idiot who's going to come bang on your door and say, hey, I own your property. I just bought it from the county for a couple $1,000s or whatever they paid for it, you know. And you say, screw you, get lost, and he goes get rid of possession from a judge, which ends up with the sheriff out there with 20 people with guns to remove you from your home, loot the place, kill all your animals, do anything you can to put possession of the idiot that they sold the property to. Now, that ain't the biggest RICO organized crime outfit I ever seen. And we called them on it, and they buckled. What else were they going to do? You think they're going to take a chance to sit in front of a federal jury and explain how they steal these homes like this without no due process? You don't even get a day in court. They create these tax certificates, they sell them off and make money off of that. Well, that's illegal, too. I can't sit there and put your property up for collateral for my Ferraris or nothing. I mean, I'd be in jail in a heartbeat if I did that, wouldn't I? Right. So once again, you have to ask yourself, if I can't do it to you and you can't do it to me, how can your public servants do it to you? Well, guess what? They're not even coming anywhere near following the code. These tax deeds really only technically apply to state-owned property. So like out here at the Kennedy Space Center where they have the little space camp crap and all that junk, that's somewhere where a private man got a lease from the county to take so much acreage of that and build this little routine, and he's charged an ad valorem tax for that. If he fails to pay it, they can create a tax deed and give it to somebody else. Why? Because they already own the property, so they can do it that way. But, I mean, the crime and just the total abuse of process and the abuse of the commercial process against the private sector, that violates the Antitrust Acts, the Sherman Antitrust Act and the Clayton Antitrust Act. Corporations can't overpower and come upon the private sector to steal land from them because they have the power to do it. You know what I mean? That's why the antitrust laws were put in place.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, people need to know more about that antitrust legislation and how it applies to us, you know, and basically every facet of our lives these days.
Well, the antitrust laws come under Title 15, 1 through 7. I think that's the Clayton or the Sherman. I'm not real sure which one it is, but that's the act you would use to go against them with. Title 15 makes it pretty clear the private man cannot be forced to convert his property into a commercial asset just so the municipal corporations can control it. And you have case law, Monterey versus Del Mondoons. The Supreme Court's ruled the municipalities and cities cannot exert acts control over property they don't own. Well, that's a no-brainer, right?
Right.
But yet these people do it all the time with us. Code enforcement, I mean, just go down the list. We've all heard the horror stories of what's going on with these Nazis that claim to be your government, which, once again, we were talking the other night, Rocco, and my assessment on it is we don't have a government in this country. We have an organized crime syndicate masquerading as government. Once you get that clear in your head, the rest is a cinch, you know what I mean?
Sure.
But you got people believe this is some government, that this is some guys who take an oath to protect your rights and protect your property from anyone coming with guns and stealing it, but they're the ones doing it, okay? So right away that tells you it ain't government. And in other words, this government has to steal your property so we can protect your property rights? It's kind of like the old Vietnam adage, in order to save this village, we must burn it, and that's not what they're doing, you know?
Yeah, or like the UN going there into, Libya to help them.
Yeah, Bo, you're a little not broke up. You're just kind of like really into the microphone a little bit. It's kind of distorting your voice, but I'm having a hard time making out what you're saying.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm fighting the cold here today, too. I don't know if my settings changed or anything, but I was just talking about how the UN went into Libya and recently helped them.
Right. Oh, yeah. You can, if you want to look at those so-called phony little wars we're having, that's all there to give them freedom. I mean, man, if you ask me, when you're walking around with an AK-47 strapped on your butt, I'd say you're a free man, wouldn't you? Yeah, here we are in land, the free home of the brave, and God forbid if you have a BB gun, you'll have a SWAT team bearing on your ass ready to beat the crap out of you and cripple you just to save the people from you, you know? It's just, I can't believe that people go along with that crap. Sitting there watching this World War II flick the other night, I forget which it was, but had this little Frenchman riding a bicycle down a little trail, a couple of Nazi soldiers stop him, and I'd start, where you been, where you going, where's your papers, looking through his stuff. It's like, man, that's a traffic stop here every day. But yet we're all convinced that we had to take out Hitler to stop that stuff, but it goes on here 5,000 times, well, probably 500,000 times a day here in land, free home of the brave, same exact routine. But they got people brainwashed and believing that we're free, and what's the old saying, the best slave you can have is one that thinks he's free?
Yep.
I can shut up here for a minute and take a breath.
Human farming.
Well, we do have Mark Jackson joining us.
I saw him.
Oh, we're keeping him out of this, man. We don't want him.
Oh, you got him muted? Good deal.
I got him muted.
No, I muted myself. Self-moderation. Hey, guys. Just wanted to listen to Steve. This is the man I go to for rights advocation, let's say.
Now, common sense is what we're lacking here, and critical thinking skills in the American public. That's why we're having these problems. But I can go on and on. I can read this stuff off. I got Florida statutes, real estate used as a homestead. Means real property. Now, remember, once again, real property is a commercial term. Chances are, if you're living in a home somewhere, you don't have real property. You have private property. That's something you got to remember. Real property, real estate, and estate and all that stuff, that's all commercial terms for corporations like McDonald's. They have real property. Each one of those locations is real property for them because that's part of their assets. Even the definition out of Black's Law Dictionary of real property, it states that land, that is an incidental or appurtenant to land, that which is immovable by law except for the purpose of sale, embedments, industrial growing crops and things attached to it or forming part of the land, which are agreed to be served before the sale or under the contract of sale, shall be treated as goods and be governed by the regulation and sale of goods. That's how it's out of Black's Law. It's got California Civil Code Section 658 there behind it. So, point is, the term real property does not apply to your property. And when you're using all these terms or doing a quiet title action, you call your property real property, big mistake, man. It's private property.
That's good information, too, because there's a lot of people getting on this quiet title action movement, if you will. And, that's a good thing to know about the terminology.
Yeah, and then once again, they use residential real property here. Now, here's what I found out of the Florida Constitution. Article 7, Section 4F, Taxation Assessments. For all levies other than school district levies, assessments of residential real property is defined by general law, which contain 9 units or fewer, and which is not subject to the assessment limitations set forth in Section A through C shall change only as provided by this section. The thing that tells me is that real property, or in this particular case, residential real property, is like someone that owns an apartment complex. And if you live there, you can get a homestead exemption. Why? Because the Constitution gives you the right to have someplace to live, and they can't tax that. So right away, the owner of the trailer park or the owner of the apartment complex or whatever it be, if he's living there, he's going to apply for homestead exemption. Now, homestead exemption came into play back there in the late 1800s, early 1800s when they started this taxing stuff, because 80% of the people lived on farms and ranches and lumber mills. So in order to protect their rights, which they have to do, they had to make sure that all these people, that their homes were completely put off the map as far as anything they could levy on or anything they could tax or anything they could take for any kind of taxes. So you had to get into court in 40, you get up to 160 acres to set aside as a homestead. Then that's where I go back to. I don't care. Once again, let's define this even more clear. Before I was talking about if you live in a neighborhood like a lot of people do, or you're living on some whatever 200, 300 foot by 300 foot lot with the 3-bedroom house and the garage and the swimming pool and all. Now, I don't care if you're living on 100 acres of land with a 50-bedroom mansion, 20-car garage. If all you're doing is living there, no taxes. How can they put an ad valorem tax on that? Now, since I brought up ad valorem, let me flip over here and I'll read you the definition out of Black's Law Dictionary of ad valorem. That's the biggest clue we have here, is that definition is what the ad valorem stands for. Here you have people every day paying these property taxes, and it says right on the statement that it's an ad valorem tax, but nobody knows what the word ad valorem means. If they did, they wouldn't be paying it, most likely. Hang on a second. Instead of going in the order I put it on, I got to flop through here and find out where I put the definition on here.
We'll go ahead and open up the phones for calls a little earlier than if you want, maybe starting in about 5 minutes here after we go through ad valorem. How's that sound?
Yeah, I guess it'd be fine. I got tons. Like I said, I got so much stuff here, man. It's almost like trying to figure out where to start and where to stop,
I see that.
Yeah, man, I can go on, and I got tons of case law up the yin-yang here, man, that is, and a lot of it's out of Florida, but a lot of it is also U.S. Supreme Court cases, because normally if I can't find a good state case, I'll try to come up with at least Supreme Court cases then to back it. And even other state cases are okay, but it's really nice if you can work within the, hang on a second.
I really have to hand it to the people of the state of Florida for, they were one of the first people to get really serious about this foreclosure stuff and fighting these fraudulent foreclosures and such down there.
Yeah, and that's cool because we have a, what do they call it when you have to go to court for a foreclosure? Some states don't have that type of foreclosure. I'm not really up on the foreclosure things. I mean, I don't have a dog in that fight. So there's so many people that have done so much good work on it. How can I improve on it, the way I look at it,
Right, so Florida is a judicial state.
You're right, that's what I'm thinking.
That's it, that's the word. Yeah, it's a judicial foreclosure state. So in other words, they have to take you to court. But when it comes to tax deeds and taking your home over a couple $1,000s, they can't prove you. They don't need it, they claim, which is not true because the Florida statutes make it pretty clear that the property tax collector, has to bring an action within the jurisdiction, the court of jurisdiction where the property is located. So they have to give you due process, but they never do. You know why? Because there is no procedure to tax the home. So they have no statutes to attach to the complaint that they're going to bring into the court to collect the taxes. But now, when they're doing it on a commercial property, say you own some little Habib's or, let's say Bo and Rocco's ice cream shop, and you don't pay the taxes, they'll bring you into court. Why? Because they got the business license. They have all that stuff where you agreed to pay the taxes. Then they can show the failure to pay. You know what I mean?
Right.
But when it comes to your homes, there is no procedure. That's why they don't do this. They'll never bring anybody into court when it comes to these tax deeds on homes. They just create the tax deed, and then most people usually abandon the properties, what it appears from the research I've done. When they realize they've lost it, they just move, But not everybody has anywhere to go, They're just kind of stuck there until a bunch of jerk-off with guns come and pull you out of there so they can give it to the people that they sold it to, You just go, my God, I can't believe this. They do this all the time, and they admit they do it all the time, which I like that. They just create the tax deed, and you got to...
All right, from the Skype line, we have Chantel here with a question for you, Steve.
Okay.
Can you hear us, Chantel?
I don't hear anybody. I hear you. So
I do hear, but somebody's still... Oh, I know what's happening. I need to turn off the radio here.
Yeah, please turn off your radio, folks, when you call in or Skype in, so we don't have that echo and such. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Good evening to all of my friends. Sexy, handsome Rocco and Baby Bo. Love you both. Moi, moi. And our special guest, Steven. Hello.
Hello.
Question for you.
Okay.
I appreciate all of your knowledge and what you're bringing forth, and it is truly needed. My friends here on the Bo and Rocco show are aware of a scenario that I have experienced about 2 weeks ago. So a long story short, I did acknowledge the warranty deed some time ago, and I have had tax assessors come to my door trying to get me to recontract with them in any way possible. So my question to you is, it sounds as if you're saying that we all need to take responsibility and find these codes, laws, and or statutes for our state and present that to the either the director of finance or the tax assessor. Is that what you are suggesting that we do?
Well, yeah, that's what I did, mainly because it seemed like the smart thing to do, because the property appraiser is where it all starts, okay? If it ain't on the assessment roll, they're not going to tax it, and he's the one who puts it there, so you have to kind of go after him first.
The tax assessor?
Yeah, the property appraiser, whatever they call him in your state.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, if you have a mortgage on the house, though, how does that affect this situation?
It wouldn't affect it at all. It's not being used for any commercial purposes or create a profit or a, let me see if I can think of the words here that they use in the case law here. A calling they use, a profession, manufacturing. That's pretty much what has to be going on there in order for it to come underneath the citus of the state constitution. Because that's what it was always about. But the taxation thing came into play was to create money for the municipal areas to have the fires and all that stuff. And they want to make it sound like it's the homeowners that are supposed to support that. That's the reason why you read about these counties and states want these big businesses and corporations or manufacturers to come into their area, because it gives them the tax base so they can, put up better stoplights and better trash facilities to collect trash and do things like that. That's where the money comes from. It's not supposed to come from the homeowner. And I hate to use that word. Actually, landowner is probably better. I don't care if you own, like I said, 100 square feet little piece of land that you have a little grass shack on would be exempt from taxation, or if you had the 50-bedroom mansion sitting on 100 acres would be, no way would ever come underneath the constitutional citus of the state to come underneath the ad valorem taxation. I must not have put that word on this paper. I'm going to have to go hunt it down someplace else. Anyhow, point is, ad valorem, when you read it in the 6th edition Black's Law Dictionary, it makes it perfectly clear that ad valorem tax is a tax on an article or property in commerce. That's the definition in the Black's Law Dictionary. So now you have to look at your home and say, here it says at the top, ad valorem, non-ad valorem assessments. Now, let's get into the assessment part. According to the Internal Revenue Code, in order to have an assessment, there must be a return filed first. Otherwise, how do the clowns know how much money you made off the property?
Right.
So, once again, who files a return on their home? Like nobody. So how can you even have a valid assessment? And they're never signed. That's the first thing I did with the property appraiser here, was asking for signed assessments with the public records request. Never answered them. And we went and talked to him, and he goes, what, do you expect me to sign all 660,000? I was like, no, just sign mine. Well, point is, he never presented a signed assessment. Well, I got case law as long as my leg from the tax courts that state if there's no signed assessment, then there's no tax, is there?
Correct.
So, once again, when we just start doing the research and understanding how the taxing procedures work, it has to be the same across the board. The state constitution makes it very clear, even the federal constitution, that all taxation has to be uniform, but it's not. Because if you got a guy living in let's say the same 3-bedroom house, but he's not homestead exempted, well, he's paying $4,000 a year property tax, and the guy that is homestead exempted is paying $1,300 property taxes then every year. So, once again, there's no uniformity there, and it's not fair and just, even if they were allowed to do what they're doing. And then you would get no, what's the other word? Like the businesses they get exemptions for their humanitarian stuff. In other words, they non-profit type of things. So I guess the point I'm making is, if you put a new roof on your house, they don't give you a tax deduction. If anything, they'll be raising it, because then they try to take the market value of your home, which that doesn't apply there either. The market value only applies to a developer who's just taken a bunch of land and made it all up into little parcels and built houses on it. And while he's selling it, that's when the market value will be placed upon it for an ad valorem assessment through the property appraiser, for the tax collector, for the guy that built the complex or the subdivision. And where else was I going to go with that? Man, I lost my track here. The point I'm making is the market value is what they tend to use here. They want to claim they can walk up to your house and say, well, it's worth this much money, so now we're going to do our millage and our little centy thing and put together what you owe now for taxes of the market value of your home. Well, it ain't on the market. You're not selling it. You got no money in your pocket at all from that. You know what I'm saying? So once again, they're falsifying records. They're abusing a process for a financial gain.
And is there a remedy to go back and sue these people for doing this?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can recoup all the fraudulent taxes that they've collected.
Yeah, and plus I believe you could just go after them for just the criminal acts they've done and probably walk away with several $1 million for it, because it's what they're doing is illegal, and they're doing it as a corporation. They're collecting money they have no authority to collect. I mean, you see where you got banks and under the mortgage stuff, and these guys are getting sued where they're getting all kinds of settlements. The homeowner's getting land for free, and they're getting some $900,000 out of the bank for it, you know? So they're making settlements on it because what they're doing is illegal.
Right.
They have no authority to be doing what they're doing. They're only getting away with it because they got people stupid, and they got them scared. Because here on the tax statements, they'll make it clear at the very bottom in fine print that failure to pay this tax, you might lose your property. Now, if that ain't threats and extortion through the mail, I don't know what else you could call it, you know? It's like we got your kid. You don't pay us, or the kid's a goner, you know what I mean? So what's the difference, you know?
Right.
I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. Like I said, when you start using a little common sense and looking at what they're doing, and you're reading the Constitution saying I have the right to own property, but according to the for-profit municipal corporation, I only have that right as long as I'm paying the for-profit chartered corporation some type of protection fee or extortion fee every year to have my property. Otherwise, they're going to come with guns and just take it and wipe it out.
And I'm just going to reiterate the point you're making here. You're recalling that you just went down there and talked to him, and then in the case with your friends, the same thing. You didn't even have to file a federal lawsuit against these guys. They just said, oh yeah, no problem, we'll take care of it.
Yeah, that's because I went in there pretty much knowing what I was talking about and asking these pertinent questions. How do you get here, when this says you can't do what you do? And they knew you had them by the balls, man, so what else are they going to do? If they want to go to court, fine, make my day. I love that, let's go there. Let's go to federal court and explain to a federal judge and a jury of homeowners how you do what you're doing here. You can't explain it to me, and I'm sitting right here in the desk in a room with you, so I know you ain't going to be able to explain it when you get into a courtroom with a jury.
Right.
So that's the key. The fact is he was so evasive when we went there. I got this public record script asking for the procedure of how you tax private property. He looks up at it and goes, what is private property? I go, well, my home, my car. Oh, no. Your home is real property. Your car is tangible property. Right away I knew I had him. Here he is trying to convert my property into some commercial terms to claim he has some ability to tax it. So I called him on it. Now I'm whipping out the definition of real property out of the Black's Law Dictionary and asking him how that fits my property, that you just called it that. I mean, it was a little, not so much of an argument. It was real calm, and I'm hitting him down, I'm shooting him down every time he comes back with some gobbledygook like that. Even when I ask for the signed assessment, he looks over at my friend Sherry, and I go, well, you expect me to sign all some 500-something thousand of them or something? He's like, no, just sign mine, and he just looks down with a stupid smirk on his face. He knew I had him, man. He knew I knew what was going on. So that's really the key, is you got to know what you're doing. You have to understand what you're talking about, because I've given this information to some other people in Florida around the state, and they just gone in there the next day and they just shot them down, I mean, you could just tell that the property appraiser and all knew that this guy didn't know what he's talking about. He's just walking in with some piece of paper he got off the internet or something, So you have to know what you're doing, know what you're talking about, and understand what laws they're breaking. And when you're able to come back at them, go, well, gee, that's stimulating lawful process under color of law under Florida statutes 843.085551, 2, and 3. Well, that comes underneath the prohibited acts, which is identical to the RICO Act there, So I'm sitting here popping this stuff off at him, so he kind of figured that he knew that this would not be good for him. So it was easier to just take my house off the tax roll. And he did it to my buddy Andy's house. He did it to my older sister's house, and that's what we've done over the last 5 years. And they don't receive no tax statements, get nothing from them anymore. It's not even on the tax roll. It doesn't even come up on their website anymore.
Nice.
Point is, everybody can do this. Every state has to have the same thing. My wife's parents live in Arizona there, Tucson, and I was looking through their constitution a little bit, and we found the household goods, the personal effects, almost the same thing, even making the point that it's to be excluded from the tax roll. And the Florida Administrative Code says the exact same thing. Household goods and personal effects are to be excluded from the tax roll. But guess what? They got your household goods and personal effects, which is defined as your shelter, on the tax roll. That's falsifying an official government document for financial gain for the corporation. So that's the key, is knowing the stuff well enough to be able to rattle that crap off to them when you're talking to them, and that tends to intimidate the crap out of them because they're not used to anybody doing this to them. They're used to most people wanting to go in there and deal with the value adjustment board and talk their little bull crap. Oh, well, my property's this and that. It shouldn't be this much. It should be this much. Why would you ever do that? I mean, it's like, how do you get the authority to tax to begin with is where everybody should be going, but instead they want to argue about they think their taxes are too high. Well, what makes you think you owe a tax on it to begin with? Just because all the other monkeys have been doing it for the last 50, 60 years?
Right.
That's
Yeah, but there's a breach of fiduciary duty lawsuit, follow up with the tax assessor on that.
Yes, it is, and it also covers sedition and insurrection and on the verge of treason. Because they take an oath to the Constitution to protect your rights and to do their job according to the Constitution and the legislative enacted statutes, which is what I've just read there. That's what that is, legislative enactment. Permanent residents of the owner shall be exempt from all taxation thereon. What part of that do you think the property appraiser is not understanding? You know what I mean? I mean, it'd be no different than if I could pull some crap on you guys go, well, yeah, I'm on your show. Now, you know that's $1,000 each if you got to send me now. So if I can brainwash you morons into believing that you're supposed to pay me $1,000 every time I call into your show, well, who's the idiot, you know?
Right.
Hope that wasn't too drastic of an analogy there, but...
No, it's...
I'm just trying to tell you that's where we're at. That's why they're doing this, and that's why they're getting away with it. So, and another key, too, the last thing you want to do is go into their courts. You want to go to federal court, where they got no friends.
Yeah.
As long as you're down in their own little circuit or superior courts, where they call them your state, they're going to railroad all over you, look at you like you got three heads and there's something wrong with you because you're reading these codes, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you're not going to get nowhere with that. So the best thing to do is go after it after a constitutional right, because that's what they're doing. They're denying you your right to peaceful possession of your property by sending you this fraudulent crap in the mail that they don't have the authority to do. And then have them come along and have to answer your complaint and state, hey, here's this Constitution that allows us to do this. Here's the legislatively enacted statutes. Here's the government code that shows exactly how we set up these assessments on your home used for non-commercial purposes, strictly nothing but a private dwelling of the owner, and that's all it is. And here's how we get across that constitutional right to own property so we can tax it. And failure to pay the tax means you forfeit the whole $300,000 worth of home for a measly $4,000 or $5,000 that they can't even prove you owe. Without any due process, not a day in court. That's how they do it here in Florida. I heard other states, so they may at least get you into some local podunk court there and play some crap with you to where they can do some certificate of title through the court and transfer the property to the county so they can have their tax deed sale. These guys skip all that stuff, okay? They don't even do that here. And like I say, if I move into my paperwork a little bit, I got a few case laws here that basically make it clear that the only people that can sell property are people that have title to it.
Yeah.
It's spelled out. Commercial, everything's commercial use.
Yeah, Redfield versus Fisher here. It states, a corporation is an artificial entity which owes its existence and charter power to the state, but the individual's right to live and own property are natural rights for the enjoyment of, and which excise tax cannot be imposed.
Okay, we got to hit to get a pump the brakes, Steve.
Cool.
I'll just remind everybody we're talking about getting off the tax roll. And we left off with basically the issue of the, constitutional violations that these quote-unquote public officials are violating.
Yeah, and just to help you out here, I got some more case law here that sort of at least helps us understand the theory of what this is all about. And this particular case comes from Harder's Fireproof Storage and Van Company versus Chicago, where they made the comment that this principle is bottomed on the theory that the subject of an ad valorem taxation is property. That of an excise taxation is a right or privilege, or a fee or tax exact for the privilege of incorporating or doing business as a corporation. Thus, it is well settled that a state may collect an ad valorem tax on property used in a calling and at the same time impose a license tax on the pursuit of that calling. And let me see, turn over the page, and we got another one.
The license again. You have to have a license to be considered to be in a commercial activity.
You got it. Yeah, there you go. You have to have the excise license in order
You
for
could be building race cars, furniture, dog houses. It would not apply to you. So.
Well, yeah, you have the right to do private business. What if you want to get piano lessons or something in your home, and all of a sudden your home come underneath an ad valorem taxation? And plus, they probably wouldn't even let you do it there. You'd have to go get some little studio downtown in some commercial strip mall somewhere and call it, Bo and Rocco's Learn to Play the Piano or something. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then you come underneath a property. Well, of course, you wouldn't even be involved in the ad valorem tax. That'd be the guy that owns the strip mall that's going to be paying that. Of course, the ad valorem tax is going to be included in your rent, most likely. You know?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Good point there. That's a good point.
So you really wouldn't be able to get out of that as long as you want to, rent someplace to do business like that in a business area. You're going to technically be paying the ad valorem tax whether you like it or not. More case law. If the tax is in fact imposed on property, no matter what it may be called, it is a property tax. And the courts will look through the form of substance and will prevent that from being done by indirection, which cannot be accomplished directly. Dawson versus Kentucky Distilleries and Warehouse Company. Now, this is U.S. Supreme Court. So, but look at the point that all these cases, do you see any cases here that's John homeowner against the property appraiser? I couldn't even find any cases like that. Going all through American jurisprudence and Florida jurisprudence, looking through all the state and taxation sections, reading who knows how many thousands of pages you had to go through to pull out these little cases and things that explain what ad valorem and excise taxes all have to be as the way the courts interpret it. So I couldn't even find any cases where Joe homeowner had a property ad valorem tax issue, which I don't know, that means they just don't go to court because the homeowner can't afford to do it or has no idea what's going on. I don't know. But the point is, I couldn't find any cases of John.
They're in the dark. Nobody knows this. I mean, this is a revolution going on here. People are waking up.
Yeah, that's how you look. Yeah, I guess that's a good way to look at it. Once again, Florida statutes has got my attention. I use this in the brief, too, that Florida statutes 220.03 definitions called ad valorem taxes paid means property taxes levied for operating purposes and does not include interest penalties for discounts foregone. In addition, the term ad valorem taxes paid for purposes of the credit of 220.182 means the ad valorem taxes is paid on all new additional real or personal property acquired to establish a new business or facility or a business expansion. So, every time you start reading through these tax codes, that's the key, too. When you're reading through the taxing statutes in your state, maybe don't pay so much attention to what you're seeing, but pay attention to what you're not seeing. Nowhere are they describing the place that you eat and sleep and do all that stuff.
Open play, Steve. Be good.
Yeah, I was watching my language here so the kids can listen to the program, the refeed,
That's right. We're offering up our show up to ages of all ages this week.
There you go. So I'm self-censoring myself here.
Good job.
Damn good at it too, ain't I?
Hey, yeah.
You're getting better.
Yeah, and like I say, I got case law. I can sit there and read the stuff all night long, but it all pertains to businesses done, passed to raise revenue as distinguished from property taxation, and it's imposed upon the right to exercise a privilege, and its payment is made in condition to the exercise of the privilege involved. The principle is the imposition of both an excise tax on a privilege, activity, occupation, or calling. That's the terms I was looking for. Privilege, activity, occupation, or calling. And an ad valorem tax on property used in the exercise, conduct, or performance of such calling or privilege or an activity is not invalid as double taxation, because they had a few cases where people were saying, hey, I'm paying an excise tax and I'm also paying an ad valorem tax. They thought they were being double taxed. Well, they're not. The excise tax is the privilege to do the business. The ad valorem tax is being taxed on the equipment and the property you use to do that, like the bulldozers. And, you just go down the list. Of course, that comes under tangible property then. So you have tangible property, you have real property, and then they have, what's the other term? I think the main two terms that tend to be used in the statutes here is tangible personal property and then real property. And this is all property that's being used for the business, whether it's the tractors and trucks and things you use, even the stalls and things. If it's a wood shop of some kind, though, that's going to be your personal tangible property. They're going to go in there and hit the table stalls up and do a valuation of what someone would pay for that if they were going to buy it the next day. And then all that's laid out in the assessment then of what you would owe and technically an ad valorem tax. The point I guess I'm really getting down to is it appears these people are abusing a commercial process and applying it to the private sector for technically financial gain. And as we discussed earlier, that's theft. If they're collecting money they don't have authority to collect, and they're doing theft, they're doing it in an organized crime fashion, and racketeering. It fits RICO really well if it gets down to it, because you can probably find 500,000 pieces of property in every county they're doing this to. Another way to look at it, too, is where they're using this money. We can't even find out what they're using the money for. Obviously, that's where they're getting the money for all their cameras and their SWAT teams and their armored vehicles and their helicopters. So here we are funding our destruction by paying these people this money that we don't even owe them.
That's the answer right there. If you ask me, they've tricked us into paying for our own demise.
if you just look at the tax rolls in general, you'll see that almost 80% of the properties on the tax roll are properties that aren't supposed to be on the tax roll. So if they're collecting $1 billion a year in property taxes, cut that down 20%. That's what they truly should be collecting. Then they wouldn't have the money to do all this crap that they're doing to us, technically.
Which they say they don't have because they're bankrupt.
Well, they hide that in the confidential annual financial reports, right? That's how they do it. They're hiding it.
Yep.
There's no way these states can be bankrupt, man, with the money they're pulling in through this fraud that they're doing.
Well, I wonder what that number is in Los Angeles County. You know, there's almost 1 million people in Los Angeles County.
Yeah. And just think of every house you pass by in a neighborhood, it's probably paying some $3, $4, $5, who knows, $10,000 a year in property taxes on that house, that home. That's all they're doing is eat, sleeping, and, you know.
9 million, I think, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're assuming that just because all them people don't mean each one has a house. Usually,
right, exactly.
A lot of them live in apartments, or some of them are renting stuff. So, you know, if you kind of sit down and work the numbers out, you'll probably still come up with at least probably, 300,000 or 400,000 houses possibly, and then a bunch of apartment complexes, condominiums, things like that, you know. So,
yeah, you're right. The population is more like almost 10 million. Yeah, they're probably going to come up with a box tax, too, for the people living in their boxes.
Right, there you go. Box tax, I like that.
Well, I should have said that. Now I'll give them some ideas.
We got a wet box, a dry box. We're going to tax them all.
I guess bottom line is when you just use common sense, and you know the Constitution gives you the right to own property and have some place to live, which is obviously a substantive right, a God-given right. I don't care. I mean, how can they tax that? How can they claim you have to pay a tax on it in order to have a home? So you have a woman and a man, let's say kids, you know, they get married after high school, they manage to come up with enough money or get good jobs where they get a mortgage and buy a house. Now all of a sudden they're a taxpayer? How does that work? How do you become a taxpayer just because you want to practice your right to have some place to live and raise your family and some place to put all your stuff? Stay warm in the winter and cool in the summer and stay out of the rain. That's the right. I mean, so in other words, if you can't afford to do it, because I know people, I've heard people that have said, oh, we can't afford the house because we can't afford to pay the taxes on it.
Right.
Now, that just blows me away to think that people think that that's a normal way that people conduct themselves in land of the free, home of the brave, and that's how we do it here, you know?
But we do. It's sickness, just like you have cancer? Well, let's give you chemotherapy because that's what you need. You know, it's the same thing. People are just brainwashed.
Yeah, ignorance is a better word for it, too. Plus a little brainwash, because, you know, their daddies paid it, their granddaddies paid it, so everybody's paid it. So
we've been imprinted and conditioned and just sold on it. So
there must be, and they think there's a law. You know, I have people say, it's a law. And I go, well, show me the law. I've asked the property appraiser, tax collectors, my county commissioners, city commissioners, administrative directors, and the mayors and everybody. Nobody's been able to show me any law that says that they can do what they're doing. And by law, they have to show you the law if there's a law, right?
Correct. Yes, they do. Oh, yeah. You shared with me. Yeah, okay. You talk about that.
I got a few friends who say, well, they just think you're a kook. That's why they're not doing it. So I don't care. Where does it say that if they think you're a kook, then they don't have to show you the law? Point is, I guess, is that it's obvious that they don't know what they're doing, or they do know what they're doing, and they do the best they can to have to just make you look like some kind of idiot. It's like when we discussed the other areas, like getting arrested, no warrants, things, you start bringing this stuff up, and no corpus delicti, no causation. None of these elements exist to get the court jurisdiction. They don't want to look at you like there's something wrong with you. But I just use that to set them up so you can go into federal court for due process violations, and then let that judge and the prosecutor and all these other yin-yangs go walk in there and explain how they pull on this malicious prosecution when you have no damage to injured party, which I got case law longer than my leg that makes it pretty clear that in order to have a case, there has to be an injured or damaged party, whether it's physical or economic. You know what I mean?
Right.
Without that, no court has jurisdiction. But guess what? We know these idiots do it over traffic. I mean, God, you can just talk to Eddie Craig. He can explain the traffic garbage to you, which is the same thing going on here. You know, from my understanding, you can't even be considered guilty of speeding unless you harm somebody doing it. You can't be even guilty of running a red light unless you harmed somebody when doing it. But guess what? They go around writing these little tickets. Well, isn't that bills of attainder?
Yes. The red cam light, it definitely is. I asked him that exact question when he was on talking for 4 hours. So,
right on.
Yep. The red light cam is definitely a bill of attainder. All the other tickets are under bills of pains and penalties, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah, but those red cam tickets are good as gold. That you can just slam them big time. And
Now, what I was going to ask Steve is for folks that are maybe renting out homes that they own, or rental properties, rental lands. I don't know. How would this apply, if at all, to them?
Well, according to the state statutes here, if it's being done in a private way, it still wouldn't come under taxation. Remember that statute that I just read to you that the legislators believe that, or make it clear that if you're renting, leasing, or whatever, unless it's used for dwelling units, dwelling purposes, so to speak. Once again, I don't have a dwelling unit either. That's another thing I had fun with the property appraiser. He kept calling it, a single-family unit. It's like, give me a break. When was the last time your buddy said, hey, let's go over to Rocco's family unit or whatever and go watch TV, You have to use common language in the statutes. If it truly applied to you, they'd be using the common language to describe what they're allowed to tax. But instead they use all this residential property and real property and commercial. And they use all these crazy commercial terms to describe your home and claiming they have a right to be able to tax that because they use those terms.
Same with driving. Okay, you're traveling. Oh, no, you're driving, and we just to go along with it, we agree to it. Well, I guess I must be.
I've never driven in my life. I travel in an automobile.
Right.
And that's it. I ride in the automobile. When you go back through history, did you hear it? Did George Washington have a license? Did he have a tag on his horse?
I think I'm going to put a basketball on the hood ornament and go, I'm traveling, officer. Can't you tell? Look at that basketball up there. So.
Well, the point I'm making is it was supposed to have been that way from the beginning. When I look through history, I can't find anywhere where George Washington or Thomas Jefferson paid a property tax on their homes. I can't find where Abraham Lincoln did it on the cabin or anything. I can't find where even Teddy Roosevelt or Abraham or any of these other future guys ever paid a property tax.
And we all got to start talking this way. We got to turn back the clock, and we just got to say exactly what you said and start, just unbrainwashing. Just get people, hello, put your thinking caps on. What the hell? You got the wool pulled over your eyes.
Well, they've just been misled, and these people are once again conducting organized crime upon the population that they take oaths to protect from criminal acts. If you ask me, that's what makes them so easy to go after, though.
Right.
Once you can put the goods on the table to show that what they're doing is illegal and does not apply to the property they're applying it to, now you have them for falsifying records for financial gain, creating fictitious obligations, false securities, basically, and then you go to the Securities and Exchange Commission and report them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the problem is that we're in competition probably with Dancing with the Stars or American Idolatry.
Yeah, or reruns of Frasier.
Oh, God. That is hell.
I mean, that's the problem. And like I say, I've tried to get even my own family won't even get into this stuff. They just go, They're like, okay, fine. Why don't you go ahead and give me $5,000 every year then instead of giving it to the damn thieves?
No doubt.
Well, like I say, you can't get through to people. They just don't seem to care. Now, of course, I have some friends that do really well, got a lot of money, and I guess if I was making $16 million a year, I wouldn't care about $10,000 a year in property tax either. But when you're an average guy making $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year, maybe the wife is making about the same or half, and you're getting yanked out for $3,000 or $4,000 right there before Christmas, as always comes up in November, that's kind of quite a yank out of the bank account, if you ask me,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. There goes your... Hey, that could be Christmas right there.
Yeah, you see, I'm populating the chat here in the Skype thing here with some stuff.
Oh, good.
Guys will find it interesting.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Now, what's astounding is Chantel is actually sharing with me the mentality of this tax collector that showed up at her doorstep the other day, and I mean, they must be programmed to believe this stuff because they gave her a form and said, here, fill this out. It's the law. Okay, I've never seen a law making me have to fill out anything, especially since, he didn't even want her to read it.
I can kind of help you out there a little bit. Some of the appraisers have been around for a while, no. But you have to think about this now. These appraisers get elected. Now, they come into an office that has a bunch of these morons that have been there for 20, 30 years doing this stuff. All they do is go, here, Mr. Appraiser, here's what we do. Oh, sign this, you know. He has no clue what he's doing. He's just got the elected office and the tag, you know. I mean, that's what I found out in Osceola County when we talked to the woman there. You could tell she had no idea. She'd never seen this stuff before compared to the one here in my county. He knew what we were doing. He'd seen that we'd done our homework, and he knew he could not beat that. So this is to limit the damage, just take the property off the tax roll and hope you go away and don't go sue them for it, you know?
And you're going to go back and sue them for the past, or what?
No. I'm okay with this. I found it more fun to go after them for the property that they stole from people I know and just go get it from them.
Well, good man. That's the answer right there, if you ask me. You know, we all got to lend a hand to our brother, especially these days.
If you can. Most people don't care. I got my neighbors around me, they don't care. You know, you tell them, hey, you're being ripped off. Yeah, well, whatever. Or they think they're paying their fair share, and they're doing their moral duty to see that the kids got schools and all that kind of crap. It's like, okay, fine.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't force them. I don't care if they want to pay it or not. I know I'm not paying it. That's all I care.
Funding our destruction again. Yeah, our you know, imprinting and indoctrination of the children. Oh.
And here was a nice case law I think did a real nice job for us on this little thing we just did here recently. Let me see, the case is Redfield versus Parks from 1889. It talks about tax deeds. It says, when a tax deed discloses upon its face that it is illegal, when it is disclosed upon its face that it is executed in violation of law, the law will not assist it. A tax deed is void on its face if a tax deed is void on its face if it is not in itself sufficient to set the statute of limitations in motion. A tax deed that is void on its face does not constitute a color of title. No statute of limitations can then be brought to aid its validity. That's what I use to bypass the statute of limitations. So I don't care if it's some guy that comes to me and says, hey, 10 years ago they stole my property with a tax deed. We get to go sue them for it. This case law right here tells us that the statute of limitations cannot protect an illegal deed that was there to strictly do nothing but steal property with it, you know? So I'm making a point that if you talk about statute of limitations, I think somebody, it might not have been you guys, somebody asked me about that sometime here earlier, and I told them that, hey, the tax deed went on, I got case law here says that if it's illegal, the statute of limitations can't protect it. So the way I see it, you can go back 20 years later if you realize, I mean, I hear that's also the way it's worked with fraud, that if once you realize you've been frauded, that's when the statute of limitations starts. So if 50 years down the road you realize you've been frauded, then that's when your statute of limitations starts, and as long as you do within 4 or 5 years probably, you could probably have a case to go after your property and get it back. If the municipal for-profit corporation stole it by making a create deed and did a conversion upon the property, you know. And like I said, I just can dig up the case law here and got it all over the place, man. Just trying to pick out stuff that might work for everybody.
Yeah, cool. That's helping out. That's great that you're dropping it in the window.
Well, I think that's the way to do it, too, because I know a lot of people get on some of these programs, and they kind of just give you their theory and their thoughts and things on it. And to me, we need people that are going to be telling us what the law says. You know, I don't care what your theory is on it or what you think about it, you know. I want to hear what the law says. I want to hear exactly what law they're using to do what they do. And I couldn't find no law that said they could do it.
Give us the bullets to put in our gun here, definitely.
Yeah, and hopefully people start digging in their own state, looking through their taxing statutes and the exempting statutes, and look at your state constitution. Everyone's going to have a chapter or an article on taxation, and most likely they're going to cover this stuff. Florida does it. And so the point is that Florida exempts all this stuff and makes it clear that, now you got to remember this, they're talking about the taxpayer. Now, to me, a guy that's living in a home is not a taxpayer. So this is all this applies to. So that tells you there that if the taxpayer's permanent residence is exempt from all taxation they're on, surely the private man, one of the people, home cannot be taxed then either, you know? And then you look at the other exemption sections of schools and literary and scientific and all that stuff to go through. You mean to tell me that these places that are bringing in churches that probably bring in hundreds of thousands of dollars in whatever donations or whatever they call it, they get their offerings, I guess, they're exempt from all ad valorem taxation, but this guy's home down the street is not exempt from taxation. Once again, a little common sense here. It really tells you a lot, too, about how they're doing this or how they're not able to do this, I guess. And everything I can find just leads nothing but to crime, organized crime.
Well, yeah, it goes back to they got the guns.
Well, that's not true. We got guns. We outnumber the bastards 100,000 to 1, so I hate hearing that, too.
They just got the balls.
Well, no, we have a bunch of neutered men who won't get off their asses and do nothing. That's what we have here. I got 10 times more respect for the guys in Afghanistan and Iraq and all, where they're getting the guns out and they're shooting the bastards that are invading their land. Here we sit here and we just do nothing. Watch TV, like you said earlier, Dancing with the Stars and blah, blah. That's all people want to do is get that remote out, man. That's all they care about. I was watching V for Vendetta the other day, and it's funny how I noticed how all the people do nothing but sit around and watch the propaganda TV, and that's all they do. And we got the same thing going on here. I mean, you won't hear them talk on the news about none of this stuff, and I gave this stuff to the local news people. 2 of them called me, and I think they called some of the county people, and I think that had a lot to do with why they came to the early settlement table. They saw the news guys were asking them questions about this stuff, but nobody came and interviewed my friend John or myself or anybody about what was going on here, though. So I'm just making the point. The news media is scared to death to put it up on the news and say, hey, guess what? Breaking news. If you're paying a property tax on your home, you're being ripped off.
What?
Yeah. We can't have that. Then you might have riots out in the streets, so they can't have that. But I'm just making the point that the law makes it perfectly clear. If you just can read on a 6th grade level, maybe, you can at least understand this stuff. What part of permanent residence of the owner shall be exempt from all taxation does nobody not understand? And the definition of household goods and personal effects being defined as shelter, food, clothing, shelter, and it shall be exempt from the tax rolls. Now, how can anybody misinterpret that?
It happens every day.
I heard a question.
And you may answer for this. You may have an answer for this one. How is it that you avoid recording your property down at the county recorder? If you purchased a home and they do this deed for you and all these things are set up already, how is it that you remove that? Because I understand that it's not mandatory for you to even record your home at the county recorder, that there is no law indicating that it is a must for you to do that.
That's
what
true.
are your thoughts on that, Steve?
You're right. There is no law that says you have to do that. They trick you into that. That's how they get on the tax roll. But you see, once again, it still doesn't make any difference because the property does not come underneath the status of the state constitution. So I don't even care if you're doing that.
Right. And that's why I'm sitting here wondering, how is it that you remove the property altogether? Now that you know, how can we remove it?
Well, I went in there and ambushed the property appraiser with the law, and he knew he was. I guess he had no comeback. I mean, it's funny. I ought to get my friend Jerry on one night and let him tell you the story because he was watching me and he's over there smirking the whole time because I was nailing this guy every time he opened his mouth. I was nailing him on every time he opened his mouth. When it says the private property thing, he goes, well, you don't have private property. You got real property and tangible property. And I was like, oh, okay. Here's the definitions out of the Black's Law Dictionary. Real property. Article of commerce, is that my property? And he looked at it, read a little bit, kind of scratched his head and goes, well, then I don't know, I think conversation got changed. He did change conversation. That's kind of what he did several times. This is going on like 5 years ago now.
Now, here's the interesting thing. When I went down to the Register of Deeds to change my warranty deed over to my trust, I inquired about this very same thing. Because the reality is, you do want to stop the recording of the property via the deed anyway. You don't want to record it. You don't want that, okay? And, of course, they don't have an answer for you. However, the woman says to me, well, see, if you make your property private, then you don't get the services of the police. You don't get the services of the fire station. She said that's the whole purpose behind recording the deed, so that there's a public record of the property, so that you have access to these emergency services.
Okay, that's all bull feces. They pull that crap here too. When you read your city county charter, that's the whole reason they incorporated, so they can bring the businesses in, use the taxes to provide those services for the people. They can't take them from you. You don't have to contract. I've heard people say that too. Well, you can probably get off tax rolls, but you'll have to contract with the fire and the cops on it. That's not true either. They're there to serve the people. Once again, they're lying to you. They're just trying to put you in fear, going, oh, well, if I get my property tax rolls or if I don't do this, I'm not going to get this service if I need it. That's all crap. That's how they're bull BSing you into doing what they need you to do so they can falsify some more records and then use that as a way to extort money out of you. That's fraud in the inducement and constructive fraud. That covers those elements under cause of action. And the key is knowing how to go after them for it. See, most people don't know how to conduct a suit. They've used the public school system to make sure that you don't know a damn thing about law. They want you to go hire a third-party arbitrator known as a bar attorney to do it for you. Well, he's not going to do it for you. Why would he? He's making way too much money off the corruption. Because if they fix the system and well, not so they fix it. Here, let me make this statement. When you read the laws and you read the statutes and the Constitution, it's perfect. It is written well. Rules of evidence are wonderful. The court rules are great. The point is, the public servants are not abiding by it. So if you can get them to abide by the written rules and statutes and stuff, the system would be fine. And the key is forcing them to do it. And by suing them and taking their pensions from them and threatening to Corrento the city charter and county charter for non-compliance, I think they're going to go your way real fast, man. They're not going to take the chance of losing that charter. Then you own the city or the county. And then you get the sheriff to go get all them assets and sell them off so you can get them regroup the money they stole from you. That's how the system under law is written. That's how it works.
Well, I think that we all need to figure out how we can individually remove, our property, whether it be by a allodial title, unrecord the property, or have it, reclassified as private.
I don't think you need to even do that. I don't care what they call it. If it doesn't come underneath the state cities, then they ain't supposed to be taxing it. You call it Disneyland for all I care. All I do is sleep there and do other things, private things. So there's no taxable privilege going on there. Only business that goes on there is monkey business. That's the only business that goes on in my house.
There you go.
So that's the key. We don't have to worry about what they call it. It's their duty. When you read their charters and their preambles and stuff, it makes it perfectly clear that it's up to them to be sure that what they're doing follows the written legislative intent of the statutes and the way the charter was organized under the state constitution. If they're not doing that, then they're violating the law. They're criminals, and you go after them using their own statutes, codes, rules, and regulations. That's what they're there for. Title 18, man. When you read through Title 18, everything all talks about government agents and all this stuff. Nowhere do you hear the word people or living man or woman in there. So the codes are already set up to go after these people. But nobody knows the law. They don't teach you law. Nobody knows law. Very few people know how to write a simple courtroom brief, man. I mean, you're lucky if you can find one in every, probably 100,000 people that have any idea how to sit down and write a court brief. That's our problem. We don't know how to use the law to protect our rights against the organized crime that calls itself government. And it's up to us to put it back to government, to make it what it's supposed to be written on paper, so it serves the people instead of stealing from the people. And it's up to us to do it. And we're going to do it one house at a time, one street at a time, one neighborhood at a time, one city at a time, one county at a time. That's how it's going to get done. If you straighten out your county and have them going by the written procedures and codes and statutes and regulations and in context with the state constitution, you don't have to care what your state capital governor says or does. You don't have to care what Washington does. Your county will work just fine, and people will be paying the taxes they're supposed to be paying them, and the cops will be leaving the people alone. Code enforcement will stay off your property because they have no authority to be there. I just go on and on and on.
That ties into that deal that happened up in Minnesota. I don't know if you heard about that, where this guy got thrown in jail because he didn't have the siding completed on his house.
Yeah, I hear from them people on a daily basis. Yeah, there's a bunch of them there. Yeah, but once again, here's the cool. The Orlando Charter here, under the Power and Duty section, which I believe is the Chapter 13, Section 64.1, makes it perfectly clear that the ordinances that they can write only apply to city-owned, leased, or controlled property, period. These ordinances don't apply to your home. There's no way that can apply to private property because, they can't. Only the legislature can enact laws that apply to the people. So there's no way that your podunk morons down at the city commissioners or city council, whatever you call them, can create any ordinances that tell you when you got to cut your grass, how you got to paint your house, what color your swimming pool could be, where you can park your cars, and how many of them you can have. None of that crap applies to your home or your private property. It can't. It would violate your right to own the property, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
But since they got everyone stupid and they don't know what their rights are, therefore they go along with this crap, or they're being in fear because the code idiots are going to say, well, there'll be a $50 a day fine to you move that, blah, blah. So, okay, right away, but I can't afford that. So they're out there moving cars or cutting grass or painting their house and doing all the stuff that they probably can't even afford to do. That's why they haven't been able to do it, Since we have this wonderful economy here going on, people are prospering so well here,
Yeah, the wonderful fake economy of fake money.
And don't forget your domestic terrorism statutes. It fits these people to the T.
Yeah, you have to wonder if, like, you know, who they're really writing those codes for. Oh, it's nice you wrote all those nice codes for yourself. Yeah, can we come in and arrest you now?
Yeah, those codes only apply to city property or county property. When you're reading through that stuff, abandoned vehicles and all that crap, none of that applies to your home. It even makes it clear that it has to be on the back alleys and city streets and highway or something like that to cut through the areas. And that's City Hall, they're the ones who can't have the tall grass. They're the ones who can't have derelict vehicles parked in the parking lot at City Hall or some other kind of garage area maybe the city or whatever owns. Or that's what it applies to. It's all internal regulatory codes of how the city is to conduct its business and monitor and control its employees or any contractors that may come into the city and do things. They can find them, and then they bring them into their little code enforcement tribunals. That's fine. That's all administrative. That's another problem I have with some of the people that talk about this administrative stuff. That does not apply to the people. Why would I ever want to go to administrative hearing and deal with administrative procedures against my municipal corporation? That only applies to other entities that are contracting, tow companies maybe, garbage collection, waterworks. Those are the people who will do that stuff and play the fines back and forth with each other if certain obligations aren't met at certain times and the properties aren't conducted according to the way that the city ordinances apply to it. And also, if you start a business, some of them codes will apply. You can't go walk into a 7-Eleven and have falling ceiling tiles coming out or holes in the floor. So that therefore, those ordinances would apply because that's the whole ideology of the municipalities to protect the health, welfare, and safety of the people. But they can't take those codes, commercial codes, and apply them to your house. If you want to live in a home with the ceiling falling down and holes in the roof and holes in the wall and peeling paint, tall grass, that's your right. And if your neighbors don't like it, they have to sue you. The city or the county cannot be involved in that at all. They don't have standing. They can't prove that they're in some danger over it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the only way it can go on. But guess what? We know all the time these counties and cities bring in their little tribunals and fines, and pay. And they have no authority to be making you do that. But they get away with it because people don't have a clue what their rights are. They don't understand how the system is supposed to work. So how do you know it's all screwed up if you don't understand how it's supposed to work to start with? The only way you're going to learn it is by reading your Constitution, the statutes, the government code, and get into the court rules of evidence, and just work your way through the whole thing, and you'll have a real well-rounded knowing, a well-intellected knowing of how the system's supposed to work. Then you know how to deal with these people. And when they see you coming, they'll run from you, man, because they know you know what you're talking about.
Well, when this is all over, I'm talking about some of the other legal issues going on with myself right now. I want to know who to go after for, not teaching me the law in the public school system.
There you go. Yeah, the public school systems have done more to destroy the American freedom and destroy the American prosperity than anything else we've ever had here.
Oh, I tried to go back to college a while back here. I had to drop out because the propaganda was just too in your face. I mean, I'd go to Spanish class, and there'd be some propaganda in the Spanish movie about global warming. I went to astronomy, the global warming. It's just ridiculous.
Yes, it is, and it's all to distract you from the real stuff you really need to be thinking about. Now, it's funny, too, they want to make us think that us humans on this earth can do anything to destroy the earth. It's just amazing to me. That's like saying the ants are destroying the earth because they're digging holes in the ground. You know what I mean?
Hey, Steve, we have a caller on the line here, area code 425. Do you have a question for our guest, Steve?
Yes, the big brain guy. Is that Bo? Is that who I'm talking to?
No, I'm just the little show host here.
It's not me. You must be talking about Steve then.
Steve.
I must be talking about you, Rocco.
Yeah. I will defer to Steve.
Right, Steve. I'm all with you on as far as you got the law and it's all okay, but herein lies the problem. You've got a Masonic secret society network, which the judges are a part of, the police are a part of, and they don't obey the law. They don't. For instance, in my case, I've been locked up. Probably 24, 26 times. I lost count as a political activist. Thrown in mental institutions. They just take driver's license. They have no reason. They're brutes, and you can't even get into the courtroom. You can't even get a jury. For instance, I can't even go down to my local courthouse. The police says you go out. When I go in, basically, then the two armed men basically show up and either we're going to slam your face in the concrete and put you in jail, or you're going to leave. So this is the problem I'm having, is that you got this demonic network built up, and it seems like they're all a part of it. They all know about 9/11, open genocide from the highest levels of government. And I mean, I'm trying to think, and I'm a pretty smart guy. I'm trying to think, what's my model to get around this? And I'm getting really like dark thoughts. Like the last judge who gave me a thick slap and took my license. I'm thinking, what do I need to do? Do I got to start, is my model like forming up a crew like in the movie Heat and start knocking banks over and just get enough money to where I can bribe these people? Do I got to go that way, or do I go like a kidnapping and ransom, and then that means I got a murder route? I mean, all this dark stuff is, because it all comes down to guns. It seems like it's just coming down to one side's got guns and they got SWAT teams and forces, and then they're going to crush you unless you're smart enough or you got more guns and more gangs. I mean, where's all this going to lead? How do you get the law that you're talking about, that you're able to even get inside a courtroom to even get a jury? I mean, where's it going to go? That's what I'm saying.
Well, I think it's very easy. And now here's the key. If you're having an issue within your county, you're not going to get nowhere in the county local courts or whatever they call them, their superior courts, district courts, or whatever they call them. You're going to have to go to federal court and prove that they're violating the constitutional right. Get rid of the license. What do you have the license for? I don't have any licenses. What do you need one for?
Because the armed men will stop you alongside the street. They will make you. They will smash your face on the ground. Okay. They will put you in a stinking jail cell. That's why.
Okay, hang on. I'll answer that question for you. Well, that's called assault and battery and road piracy. I mean, you just go down, learn the criminal code. That's the key. Learn the criminal code. Then it's real easy to figure out how to go after these people for what they're doing. They don't have any right to be touching you or even talking to you.
Well, they're going to do it. That's what I'm saying. I've established
Yeah. I know. You could be in an ATM machine. Some jerk-off's going to come out from behind a tree, stick a gun in your face, and you think you're going to hold a statue up and say, hey, here's a statue, so that's armed robbery. You think he's going to go away? Criminals don't care about law.
Well, so now what do I have to do? Get in a gunfight with some baby-faced cop who doesn't even know the law?
Sue them in federal court. Learn the law. Learn the procedures and how to do it correctly, and you'll beat them every time.
So you say
I've never lost once. I don't care if it's code enforcement. I don't care if it's animal control. I beat these people even in their own courts. I've gotten arrest cases dismissed, dozens of them, just for shoving their own court rules and their own statutes in their face and showing them that the statute they're using doesn't apply, and then they're violating the court rules because there was no probable cause hearing upon the so-called arrest, and they didn't get a preliminary hearing. They violate all this stuff. Then you bring the judge into federal court to explain to a federal jury how he does what he does, and they don't want to go there. They've never gone there yet. They've settled every time I've ever screwed with them. They've settled. They try to buy you off and make you go away. So you want to know how to make money? You can't find a better way to make money because they got more money than anybody else does, and they'll pay to shut you up and make you go away.
Man, I'm telling you, they take children as hostage, they rape, they burn houses down. I mean,
yeah, well, there's okay, an arson. Okay, great. Now get the criminal code out and start going after them for it.
Now, when you're lucky, then you're homeless. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I thought about that model, about an open confrontation, all this law breaking, all these felonies. But then I thought, I mean, they'll do all this. They slash tires, bug cars, homes. I mean, I can just. That's what I'm saying. I'm coming up with these dark models to defend myself.
Well, you go through the American jurisprudence or securist jurisprudence, start coming up with case law where federal courts, for instance, day one up until just recently, are always saying that municipalities and these city people don't have the authority and right to be doing what they're doing, and if they're doing it, then they're breaking clearly established law of the United States and the state of whatever you're in. And that's how you beat them.
So you say a federal court then, which I have not done.
That's what the federal courts were put in play for, was to make sure that the states did not violate the people's rights. That's why the federal district courts were put into play. That's the whole reason they're there. Go to the Constitution and read it. Article 3, go look at that. And then go look at your state constitution. Here in Florida, it's Article 5. That tells you how the state courts are set up and what their jurisdictions are and what they have to hear and how they have to handle it. And you hold them to it. If the judge screws you, you got him for sedition and insurrection. And now you go take him to federal court and let him explain there how he's violating your due process rights.
But this is the problem, Steve, is that these very federal judges, they know about 9/11. They can see all the criminality. They don't seem to do anything. I mean,
Okay, hang on a minute. First, I don't think that's going to work. I got people who say, oh, we'll just go to the Supreme Court and get all the taxes taken off. You're not going to do it that way. Everyone's got to take care of your own issues, man. 9/11, whatever. I don't care. They didn't fly no airplanes into my building, so I don't really care at this point, you know? Key is take care of your property, secure your rights. That's all you can really do. And if everybody does that, then we'll have a great society here. Quit worrying about everybody else and what they're doing.
well, I guess that is you're right, Steve. I mean, that is the last political solution, I guess, before everybody starts, before it turns into a slugfest. So
Man. Hey, listen, the courts do work. I can tell you that from firsthand experience. They do work. And I'm not the only person that can tell you those stories. I mean, I can name out a bunch of them. Rod Class, Randy Kelton, even George Gordon did really well in his early days. I don't know what he does much now, but, I mean, these people will beat these people.
Mark Stevens.
I'm here too.
Yeah, Rocco Fitz, no more people. Howard Griswold.
Mark Jackson.
Hey, that's right. Don't forget about me.
Yeah. I'm just making a point that you can't beat them, but you have to know how the system has to work. You just can't go write up a court case and go do it the next day if you don't have a clue how the system works and don't have any knowledge of it. Not experience, but knowledge. You have to educate yourself on how the system is supposed to work so you can make it work for you. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, I guess that would be the final way they would prevent it. Because, I mean, if they didn't have that system set up, and if it didn't work, then the models that I'm thinking about would be the only natural ones that people would start to fall under. They would start forming up crews, and, you know, they would start going that and form that route.
That's what the militias were put in play for. That's why they put the Second Amendment there. It's not there for duck hunting and target practice. The Founding Fathers put it there so you could go after corrupt government officials that are violating the people's rights and abusing their privilege to steal property from people.
Okay, what happens if most damage was done in another state? It's all the way over in South Carolina. I'm way on the West Coast. I still can go to federal court and sue them from there?
Well, yeah, I think so. You might need that. I don't know. I can't really say I have any experience with that trans-state kind of thing, but I do understand from reading a lot of the federal stuff that if it is a case between me here in Florida and someone in Nevada, I would use the federal courts most likely to address that situation because of the different states, you know. But you read up on it. Read up on it. And here's another thing. Don't believe a word I say. Don't believe nothing you can't prove yourself in your own research. If you do it that way, you will be fine.
Well, no, you get shell shocked. What happens is once you get smacked so many times and beat up and forced drug injections and 4 points and just maniac people all over.
I'm with you, man. That's how Al Capone handled it. If you didn't want to pay Al Capone's extortion fees, the Molotov cartel went through your store at 3 a.m. in the morning. So like I said, we're dealing with organized crime. It's not your government. It's organized crime. Our goal is to put it back to our government that serves the people. And right now, this is the best thing we have going for us, and it's working right now. And if it fails to work, then the Second Amendment is there to help us put it back into play.
So you say skip state court, just go right to federal, like a civil law.
Well, I do it under, civil rights. And the only way, and the criteria for that is you have to prove you have a constitutional right and that they have violated it. And that ain't hard to do if you understand your rights, you know what I mean? But as I said earlier, most people don't know what their rights are. Have you read?
We lost our caller.
Might have cut out there. Yeah, there's a lot of people, I'm afraid, that are like that caller out there. The best advice I think I could give from my experience is forget everything you ever learned in school about the legal system and everything. You got to get a magnet across that hard drive and just defrag completely and start over.
There you go. You're right. Yeah, you're going to reformat that hard drive and load it with some good stuff. What is it? Garbage in, garbage out. You know what I mean?
Right.
So we want to get rid of the garbage and make sure that you have the Constitution, the state statutes, the administrative codes, government codes, and if you can find American jurisprudence or your state jurisprudence and corpus secundum, my tongue tie that every time.
Corpus juris secundum.
Yeah. Yes, and come up with this stuff. I just got a girl I know here in Florida. Some library she was at gave her American jurisprudence, all 130 volumes of it. Told her, if you can get it out of here, it's yours, because they got all new ones.
Wow.
I mean, that'd be cool. Yeah, to have that in your house would be awesome.
Oh, my goodness.
So I'm just saying, this is the key. We have to start understanding the research and get the knowledge that we don't have. I think even the Bible says, my people perish due to lack of knowledge. Well, that's what's happening here. We're all perishing and losing. See, these people can't take your rights from you. All they can do is BS you and force you into not exerting your rights. And that's what they're doing. And that tends to be sedition, insurrection, fights equals treason. You know what I mean? And there's laws. That's a hanging crime. That's a hanging crime. So let's go after these people for this stuff and hang them. And use the court systems to do it. Get the convictions, get everything you need in a lawful court, which you can put they're there. They're there. They're working. They still work. We get cases all the time. Look what they're doing to the Obamacare. Even the Supreme Court saying this is socialist crap medicine and it's unconstitutional. We can't do that here.
Right.
I mean, just only 3 or 4 years ago, the U.S. Supreme Court held up the Second Amendment. I mean, look at what they do when you actually put the law in front of them and someone does it right. They'll do the right thing. They usually do.
Thank goodness about that Supreme Court on that Obamacare thing. At least that gives me some hope here. I just read that.
Yeah, but I mean, you're seeing it all the time. So I mean, I read appellate court cases that come out all the time. As the foreclosure stuff, they're making it very clear that here in Florida that if the foreclosuree doesn't have the correct complaint, which would be the original link signed notes, able to produce all that documentation, then they can't even bring a foreclosure into the Florida court systems now. Well, I'm just making a point that there's people all over the place getting their homes free and clear now and getting out of their mortgages because of that. Because these banks have sold all this stuff off. And, I mean, if you got a loan through Barnett Bank 15, 20 years ago, Barnett Bank doesn't even exist anymore. So who's got standing to sue for the mortgage? You can just go down the list, and it works the same way with everything else. If you can lay out the law, the charter, the ordinances that they're using against you with like a code enforcement issue, I beat them every time. Even in their own courts. I don't even have to go beyond. I never even had to appeal nothing. I had a friend of mine that got arrested, I guess about 2 years ago, at the courthouse. He was in there raising hell with the clerks over how much he had to pay for copies and stuff, and they got kind of ticked off of him. They did a trespass warning on him. He goes back in there 2 months later. One of the clerks there recognized him, so they had him arrested. Well, I got the case dismissed in about 4 weeks by, hey, you got the constitutional right under Article 1, Section 23 of the state constitution to have access to the courts, which shall not be denied, delayed, and without sale, all that stuff. So right away we had a constitutional issue that they're denying him access to the courts by trespassing him from the courthouse because he argues with the clerk. So they dismissed the case right away, and then we went and sued them in their own court, and they settled with us for like $120,000. And I used that Travazan versus City of Tampa for the false imprisonment for $60,000 an hour, had a $500,000 claim, and they came and settled with us because they knew they weren't going to beat us. There was no way. And hey, when you're reading the trespass statutes, it says the only person that can do the trespass warning has to be the owner of the property. Well, who owned the courthouse?
Supposedly.
The clerk, well, hold on, right, everybody owns it, but the point is the clerk that signed it had no authority to sign it, so I had her for falsifying a document and creating a fictitious or a false report to police, and I hit her up with those statutes out of the Florida statutes here. And they didn't want to go nowhere. The county judge dismissed it within 4 weeks. By the time we got the motion hearing, I filed the motion, got all that done. We had a hearing on it. The judge just looked at it, and he's reading off the address going, holy, that's here, you know? And he keeps reading on through, and he's like, I'm sorry, but we can't, we have to dismiss this. You can't do this. And I had a county judge say that to the prosecutor that was trying to prosecute it. I mean, I can come up with, I can sit here and talk all night on this stuff. I can come up with at least 20 examples of where I've done the exact same thing because these people don't know what they're doing. They're abusing the process, wanting to use it in their favor to protect them from the crimes they're doing against people. And I'm just saying, if you plead it right, if you understand how to plead law, how to write pleadings, you'll beat the crap out of them. Louis Ewing, excellent. Dave Merlin, I've learned from these guys over the years how to do this, and that's who I learned it from. Randy Kelton, that's where I've learned how to do this stuff from.
Well, hold that thought on talking all night, and we'll have to, we're have to save it up for the IRS because I definitely want to have you back. Talk about that. So.
Yeah, we'll come back next time and hit up on how to write a Title 42 1983 suit on this stuff.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
That's what people need to learn. That's another thing. No one's teaching people how to write this stuff. They just say, go file a criminal complaint. And people go, what the hell is that,
Well, that's exactly what we're all hearing. I mean, I can even vouch from Mark, or whatever. I know he's digging into this, and I need to learn this because I have to do this in my case. So, yeah, come back next week.
Well, how many times have I been on here railing about the basics of the pleading?
Right.
We need to know it.
Yeah, and here's the key. You can get your state's pre-trial practices manuals. They're like AMSR. It's nothing but case law out of your state saying, well, you got to have this, you have to have the elements, or otherwise you don't have a complaint. So-and-so person, such and such, right out of your state. You put that in your pleading hand to the judge. What's he going to do, override the state appellate courts and claim he can do whatever he wants? Good, let him do that. Now he's primed for a federal due process civil rights suit. I love that. And there's $1 million suit right there. And you're going to be tagging on the judge's bond. You're going to be tagging on the municipal corporations, their insurance policies, and their risk management people for having this idiot in there doing this stuff to harm you. I mean, this is really pretty simple when you think about it. Just the basic theory and concept behind it are very simple. It doesn't. You don't have to be a rocket scientist. You don't have to go to school for 50 years to learn this stuff. You do. It's going to take you a while, though, but you don't have to.
Yeah, and it's the write-up and the setups. The write-ups and the setups. That's how I see this.
And they're real easy to set up, man. They're real easy to set up because the local courts they're going to ignore everything you do because you ain't got a lawyer. They're going to assume you don't know what you're doing. You're not going to know what to do. I set them up from the very beginning. I don't care what the county or local circuit court does here. I hope they screw things up. I hope they deny motions they have no authority to deny, so I can go run down to the federal courthouse and file a civil rights violations, a due process violation suit on them. And they don't like that because they can't answer that. They can't claim, well, here's how we violated this court rule, and here's what gets us away from granting you your due process under Article 1, Section 9 of the state constitution and, of course, the Fifth Amendment, So how are they going to claim that they have a right to bypass all that or ignore all that and just convict you for something you didn't even do, maybe,
Right.
And that's kind of how things have been working here for me. Code enforcement, I stomp them right from the very beginning every time they come anywhere anyone's property. If I hear about it, I say, here's public records request, asking where their authority comes from. Well, they never answer that. Well, under Florida statutes 119, it's a third-degree misdemeanor for them not to answer them. So right away, I start racking things up on them. Next thing you know, I got 37 causes of action and, we're using about 30-some criminal statutes against them.
Well, Steve, we're down to maybe just a couple more minutes here, and I can't tell you how happy I am to find people doing the stuff you're doing and spreading this information and sharing it so freely. Maybe could you tell us where you started down this road, I guess? What woke you up?
The driving stuff kind of caught my attention there back in the early 90s. The licensing thing. Why'd I have to screw with this and tags on your car and all that crap? Didn't make no sense to me, so I started reading the DOT code and realized none of that applied to me. And then things just kind of led up from there. I told you about the woman that I grew up with her kids and had to sell the house on the lake because she couldn't afford the property taxes. So that got me into going through the statutes and reading up on how this works and how they can do what they're doing. And I just one of those guys. And plus, I'm a technician out of the shuttle program. I worked for Rocketdyne for 20 years, launching space shuttles. I'm a musician, keyboardist, and classical art rock kind of thing, the old Emerson, Lake and Palmer Yes stuff. So I ate, slept, and drank that stuff and learned how to do all that and program synthesizers and things. And I raced dirt bikes when I was a kid, so I used to work on my own motorcycle frames and rebuild my own engines. And I just kind of developed a academic way of figuring out how to read. I guess I learned how to read. I guess that's what I did, because most people can't read. I'm surprised how people just aren't very good readers. Yeah, and I think that's the key. They teach you to read on this little elementary level, and that's it. But when you have to read up at a higher level of reading, like reading law and statutes, man, people get so confused and they just give up,
Absolutely, yeah. You can't really stress enough, reading with your children when they're young and teach them to read, because they're capable of learning to read at a very high level at an early age. I've found they're just not taught that.
Well, then you should do well. You should be able to do fine reading through the statutes and interpreting what you're reading. And look at the definitions. Well, what if it's a person? Chances are you're not the person they're talking about in the statutes they're talking about. We could do an hour. We could do 5 hours on that. Actually, you should get Eddie Craig to do the persons thing. He's really good with the definition stuff.
Right.
Let him explain that. That'll help you out a lot when you are reading these statutes to understand what the definitions of the words mean. Like we talked about the real property, all that stuff they're talking about doesn't even apply to your property. You don't have real property by their definition.
Nope.
And you're not a person. You're not a person by about 90% of the statutory definitions of person are not you. Only the criminal code's about the only place that I find where the definition of person is actually called a human being, at least. Personally, I'd like a better definition than that. Living, breathing, carbon-based man walking the soil. So I really know that they're talking about me. You know what I mean?
Natural person, yeah.
All right, well, here we go, folks. We're at the end of the show.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week. We'll have Steve back here sometime ASAP. Thanks again, Steve.
At Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com.